that this is all about one prosecution. This has to do with the political campaign. I think Ms. Lofgren suggested that that some members of the committee were disappointed by your failure to obviate the need for an election by prosecuting Secretary Clinton. So I just raised the point that executive overreach appears to go both ways, and I want my colleagues to consider that as they spend the next week supporting the candidate who's really the king of executive overreach. And I guess that's not your issue today, but I hope we don't have to face that in the next term. I do want to thank you very much for spending the time here. I know it's been a long day, and appreciate your service. Thank you.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Ratcliffe, for 5 minutes.
General Lynch, after your meeting with Bill Clinton, you were asked in an interview about the appearance of impropriety and said, "No matter how I view it, I understand how people view it. It has now cast a shadow over how this case may be received." Do you remember saying that?
That was a few days afterwards in an interview, yes, sir.
And we know that you made the decision at that point not to recuse yourself from this investigation. 2 days after you made that statement about casting a shadow on the integrity of the Department of Justice, the New York Times reported that, quote, Democrats close to Mrs. Clinton say that she may decide to retain Ms. Lynch, the nation's first black woman to be Attorney General, end quote. Did the timing of that, right after the Bill Clinton meeting, give rise to any thought in your mind of reconsidering whether or not recusal in the light of appearance of impropriety might be appropriate?
Congressman, I have no knowledge of the source of that statement, nor have I had any conversations about that.
Didn't give it any thought?
My view was that I needed to discuss the conversations I had with the former president to clarify my role in the investigation.
So I don't want to impugn your integrity by asking you whether the prospect of future employment as Attorney General in a Hillary Clinton administration influenced your decision whether or not to recuse yourself or influenced your final decision regarding prosecution. But now that you've already made that decision and closed the matter, will you consider serving as an Attorney General in the Hillary Clinton administration?
Congressman, my focus is on serving as Attorney General in this administration.
I don't care about your focus. What I want to know is, will you rule it out?
That is my focus now.
You won't rule it out.
It is working on the issues before the Department of Justice. That matter is not before me.
Well, I got to tell you, that shadow that you cast on the Department of Justice just got a whole lot bigger. Because if you're not willing to rule out future employment in the Hillary Clinton administration, what that means is the American people have every right to wonder whether or not you looked at this through a fair and impartial lens, because your answer tells the American people that after the FBI director told you that Ms. Clinton had been extremely careless with at least 110 emails marked as top secret, secret, or classified and may have jeopardized the lives of actual Americans, and told you that she made numerous false public statements about sending, receiving, or turning over classified materials, you might want to apply for a job with her? Your answer, not ruling out employment with her, means that as much of the free world is wondering whether or not Hillary Clinton should have been prosecuted and possibly sent to prison for being extremely careless, as the FBI director said, with hundreds of top secret, secret, and classified emails, you're telling the American people watching today that instead of going to jail, faced with the prospect of possible future employment, you think she should go to the other end of the spectrum and be eligible to be the person with greater access and greater control over America's most sensitive and trusted national security information than anyone else on the planet? I got to tell you, utter shock is an understatement with respect to what I just heard you say. So let me ask you this question.
Well, Congressman,
I want to ask you this way. My time is limited and the clock is moving. Based upon your unwillingness to rule out future employment, in light of the fact that you and your husband had a 30-minute conversation with the spouse of a pending federal investigation, the subject or target of a pending federal investigation, and with a person who would be the subject or target of the federal investigation, if there is one into the Clinton Foundation, would you at least agree with me that if there is such an investigation, you'll have to recuse yourself from that one?
Congressman, with respect to other matters before this committee or any other, or before the Department of Justice, they'll be reviewed like any other. I will take all the appropriate action that I would need
I'll
to take
take that as a no.
in that instance.
And let me move on
And Congressman,
then,
as I've
because I've got a
indicated to
really
your colleague,
important-
just as I will not comment on the statements of
Listen,
candidates
with
or
all due
candidacy
respect,
of
I'm not going to
anyone,
let you run out the clock on the
either
American
side,
people that
I
have
would not
questions that
comment
need to
on
be
the
answered.
candidacy
So let me move
of
on.
the other one.
On July 5th, 1 week after your meeting with Bill Clinton, FBI director made an unprecedented, extraordinary public recommendation not to indict. But his statement was just a recommendation. You've said, I made the decision. And in his statement to the press, he said that what that decision would include would be quote, considerations like the strength of evidence, especially regarding intent. He said also that a responsible decision would consider the context of a person's action. So my question to you is, as you made the decision, did your final decision weigh the strength of the evidence and the context of Hillary Clinton's actions?
I will tell you, Congressman, that that was part of what the team that was presenting to me was focused on, and it was certainly encompassed those issues as well as all of the other issues that I've indicated before that would be in that. It would be contained within their entire recommendation to me.
And that was reflected in your two-sentence statement about, that starts out late this afternoon, I met with FBI Director Jim Comey and career prosecutors. By the way, how long did that meeting last?
You know, I don't recall.
Hours?
I don't recall, and I wouldn't be providing that information.
More than hours?
I don't recall and would not be providing that
Well, it says late
information.
in the afternoon. I assume it was in one day?
It's clear from the statement when the meeting occurred.
Okay, so it happened the day after, and apparently within a matter of hours, if it happened in one day. So you just told us that after a year-long investigation involving 150 FBI agents working around the clock, involving more than 30,000 emails, tens of thousands of man-hours, that your thoughtful, careful weighing of strength of the evidence took you an afternoon, a cup of coffee with the FBI director, that your decision in this case for charges relating to a person who, according to the FBI director, said was extremely careless handling America's most sensitive national security matters and is seeking to be a candidate in charge of America's most sensitive national security matters, took the better part of an afternoon. It didn't last weeks, didn't last months, didn't take days. You weighed that evidence, determined her intent and gross negligence in a matter of hours. Will you at least tell the American people whether or not you at least reviewed the 110 top secret, and classified emails that we know that she sent and received on an unsecure, unauthorized server? Will you at least answer that?
As I have indicated...
Time of the gentleman has expired. The witness is permitted to answer the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I've indicated, I received a recommendation after a briefing from the team, which included the career lawyers as well as the FBI director. I received a full and thorough briefing. We reviewed and discussed the matter, and I accepted their recommendation.
Well,
and as I've indicated earlier, again, just to be clear, the reason I do not go into these internal meetings is because the teams of prosecutors and agents who work on every matter need to be able to provide their full and unfettered advice, counsel, discussion, without the fear of political overtones, without the fear of that kind of
Since you didn't
influence.
answer that question, I'll give you a preview that I'll ask Director Comey that when he's in front of Homeland next week. And let me just close then, summarize by saying, so less than after a week after you met privately with the spouse of a target of a federal investigation, a target with whom you haven't ruled out applying for a job, you didn't recuse yourself and instead spent a grand total of a few hours reaching a decision regarding tens of thousands of documents involving our national security, and you can't seem to understand why the American people, Republicans, Democrats, and independents are outraged at your actions. If you thought the meeting that you had on the tarmac with Bill Clinton cast a shadow over the integrity of the Department of Justice, what I've heard today from you made the size of that shadow something that I will tell you that as far as casting shadows that the American people pay attention to, Punxsutawney Phil's got nothing on you. I yield back.
General Lynch, Mr. Ratcliffe had a number of good questions, and he cut you off in some of the answers. If you'd like to give an answer to anything that he just posed, we'd be happy to give you additional time to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will not take a great deal of your time. The only comment that I wanted to make clear for the record was just as with respect to questions about the any presidential candidate or candidate for any other office, just as I would not opine on policies or issues raised by one, I would not opine on policies or issues raised by the other. That is something that I want to make it clear. That is not my function as the Attorney General. I'm not attempting to do that in any way here. So just as I would not opine with respect to the questions raised by Congressman Peters, I did not want to appear to be responding about Mrs. Clinton as a candidate. My responses here have been with respect to the matters before the Department of Justice and the Department of Justice alone. As I've indicated, we have provided unprecedented access into the thinking of the investigative team in this case. I have provided access into the process by which the department was resolving this matter, things that we rarely do, but I felt was important to do in order to make it clear to the American people that my role in this matter had been decided before I had a conversation with the former president. That conversation did not have any impact on it, and that, in fact, as with every case, the team of experienced career prosecutors and agents who reviewed this diligently, thoroughly, and at great length, had gone to great lengths and came up with a thorough, concise, and exhaustive review and recommendation, which I then accepted. While I understand the frustration by people who disagree with that decision, as I've indicated before, it is similar to the frustration of people who may have a situation where they're the victim of a crime and we're not able to bring a case. And we have had similar discussions with individuals in that category as well. So I understand that frustration and the desire to see action in a certain matter where feelings are strong and emotions run high. But in this case, as with every other case that the department handles, we looked at the law, we looked at the facts, they were applied, and a conclusion was come to that was consistent with the law and those facts, and I accepted that recommendation.
Well, General Lynch, this concludes our hearing. I thank you for providing us with more than 4.5 hours of your time.